The January 6th committee shuts down. Kevin McCarthy loses several votes for Speaker of the House, and Biden pitches bipartisanship. And more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope your resolutions are going well. Mine was to go a little easier on mainstream media, and I actually haven't broken it. Until right now. During CNN's New Year's Eve countdown show, host Don Lemon missed the midnight countdown for the Central Time Zone.
That's how we started? That's how we started. Ooh, y'all ready for this countdown?
You had one job done? Gee, I can't imagine why people think the anchors at CNN are coastal elites that don't care about flyover states in the Central Time Zone. I'm actually surprised he missed the ball drop, though, since CNN has tons of experience in dropping the ball. Pope Benedict XVI and soccer legend Pele passed away. They were 95 and 82, respectively. Each of their bodies were put on display, and tens of thousands showed up to pay their respects. Pope Benedict's body was on display at the Vatican, and over 60,000 mourners showed up over 3 days to view him. My condolences to everyone in mourning. Speaking of things that are dead, the January 6th committee. The January 6th committee officially shut down this week. All in all, it lasted 18 months and cost millions of dollars. They spent over $3 million in a single quarter last year. And they actually asked for more. Wouldn't it be nice if just once some government entity said, whoops, we actually asked for too much money? Here, take this back and spend it on something that taxpayers could actually use. After all, we want to make them happy since we work for them. The January 6th committee spent 4 times as much as the committee tasked with investigating climate change, which makes some people furious that there isn't more being spent to combat climate change, and makes other people furious that that much is being spent to combat climate change. So nobody is happy. The sign of a perfectly functioning government. In a departing message, chairs of the committee, Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, said accountability is now critical to thwart any other future scheme to overturn an election. We have made a series of criminal referrals, and our system of justice is responsible for what comes next. And they probably added, oh, and can we get some extra money for the road? Okay, thanks, bye. After all is said and done, the end result of the long, expensive January 6th committee is really only 2 things. 1, a recommendation to prosecute Trump that isn't legally binding, and 2, an 814-page report, which is super frustrating, because they were able to write 814 pages in only 18 months. Meanwhile, I've been waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish writing The Winds of Winter for 11 and a half years. How is Congress more efficient than you, George? Maybe if you wrote faster, Season 8 of Game of Thrones wouldn't have fallen off a cliff. As for what happens now, the committee wrote, pursuant to long-standing House rules, the official records of the committee will be archived and pass into the control of the National Archives for the safety, security, and reputations of our witnesses. However, they warned the Biden administration they couldn't guarantee the anonymous witnesses used at the hearings would remain anonymous, as Republicans are attempting to pass a new rule that would allow them to gain control over all materials gathered by the committee. Kevin McCarthy wrote to Benny Thompson in November, the official congressional records do not belong to you or any member, but to the American people. And they are owed all of the information you gathered, not merely the information that comports with your political agenda. Which means that even when the January 6th committee is over, it still isn't over. Because according to Kevin McCarthy, that's what the American people want. Not a functioning government that actually strives to improve the lives of its citizens. They want more January 6th bickering. And they're going to get it. Considering how bad the government is at running things, imagine what it would be like if one corporation ran everything. Well, you don't have to imagine, because on our new channel Gamers Unbeaten, I talk about how the Shinra Corporation in the new Final Fantasy VII Remake is the ultimate big tech monopoly. Link is below. More after the break. Welcome back. The new Congress began this weekend. Votes were held to elect a new Speaker of the House. Yes, votes. Plural. Very, very plural. Republicans now have a slim majority in the House. Incidentally, slim majority is my rap name. And I start all my concerts by saying, slim majority in the House. Since Republicans have a majority, former Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was expected to win the role of Speaker. But he fell short when 19 Republicans broke rank and voted against him. That number grew to 20 in later votes. Another vote was held immediately after, and McCarthy lost again. He then lost a third time in just as many hours, and the House took a break for the day without electing a new Speaker. He lost 3 elections in a row? Who is he, Beto O'Rourke? And yes, they literally held 3 votes in a row. They kept doing the same thing and expecting different results? That is literally the definition of Congress. To become Speaker, a candidate needs to win a majority of the 435 representatives, which is 218 votes. Not only did McCarthy fail to gain 218 votes, he repeatedly ended up with fewer votes than Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, who got unanimous support from the Democrats. The House reconvened the next day, where McCarthy lost 3 more times, bringing the total to 6 failed votes. The House had such a hard time agreeing on anything that they barely passed a vote to leave for the day instead of repeating this endless electoral Groundhog Day. As of this recording, McCarthy has lost the vote 11 times in 3 days. Maybe he'll finally pull it off on day 4. I have no idea. But maybe you do by the time you're watching this. This is the first time multiple elections were needed for Speaker of the House since 1923. Without a Speaker, the House technically has no members and no rules. This means it won't be able to operate at all, and Americans' interests aren't being represented. So, no one will really notice much of a change. Several newly elected representatives had to wait on being sworn in, since that happens after the Speaker is chosen. But that didn't stop some people, like George Santos, from sending out press releases saying they were already sworn in. Although Santos will likely just say he was sworn in-ish. McCarthy refused to back down, and he even had the support of former Republican President Donald Trump, who basically told the Republicans to stop embarrassing themselves. Which kind of feels like being told you're too much and need to rein it in a little bit by a juggalo. Maybe it's time to reevaluate your life choices. But not for House Republicans. So it became a game of chicken to see who would yield first between the Republican leader and the GOP upstarts opposing him. McCarthy faced opposition from some members of the House Freedom Caucus, which includes younger Republicans such as Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz, who want to take the Republican Party in a different direction. And that direction is right. But the question is, how far right?
We have been in negotiations with Kevin McCarthy since the summer. Unfortunately, in the summer when those negotiations began, we were not taken seriously because our votes didn't seem to matter as much as they do in this slim majority now.
Things got heated as Boebert muttered profanities during a meeting over McCarthy's bid for Speaker. This was after McCarthy tried winning them over by serving the entire Freedom Caucus Chick-fil-A in the Speaker's office. And no, I'm not joking. McCarthy actually did try buttering up the rivals in his party who were in open revolt against him by buying them fast food from Chick-fil-A and serving it in the Speaker's office, where he assumed he'd be working after winning their votes. Because according to Kevin McCarthy, that's what younger Republicans want. Not a change to the status quo that gives individual House members more of a say, or for Congress to stop raising the debt ceiling. They want Chick-fil-A, and they're going to get it. I'm guessing these Republicans must prefer Popeyes. It's appropriate this devolved into a game of chicken. The only thing more intense than the Speaker war is the chicken sandwich war. And after the break, Biden preaches bipartisanship. Welcome back. President Biden and key members of his administration traveled across the U.S. to talk about how the economy is benefiting from bipartisanship. Specifically, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill agreed on by both Democrats and Republicans in 2021. Biden is preaching bipartisanship. This is just over 2 months after he essentially said voting against Democrats means voting against democracy. Now he's saying it's great they're all working together? This is like when two boxers trash talk at the pre-fight press conference, then after the fight hug and say they were just playing it up and always had a lot of respect for each other. Only in this case, family members are still refusing to speak to each other because they supported one boxer over the other during the fight. Biden went to Kentucky, where he was joined by Republican Mitch McConnell in promoting the infrastructure bill. Several Republicans criticized this, calling it nothing more than a publicity stunt. They also criticized McConnell and the 17 other Republican senators who voted for the massive $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill in late December. This was passed only days after the 4,000-page bill was made available for them to read, which I don't find that strange. I mean, who doesn't read the equivalent of the entire Lord of the Rings series 4 times in 72 hours? I'm sure they knew everything that was in it. I can understand why younger Republicans are upset with older Republicans. Democrats, too. Just look at Biden and McConnell. If someone in the future saw these pictures and had no idea what the context was, they wouldn't think they were bipartisan leaders of the U.S. They'd think it was a casting call for a Metamucil commercial. But at least Biden and McConnell proved that Democrats and Republicans actually have a lot in common. When they're both 80 years old, have been in politics for decades, and made enough money during their times in office that they have no way of being able to relate to the people they're supposed to serve. See, they're not that different at all. Isn't it inspiring? Speaking of Biden, the border crisis that his administration wants you to know is completely under control is totally out of control. Immigration courts have a backlog of over 2 million cases for 2022. 800,000 immigrants applying for asylum are waiting for a hearing. It's gotten so bad that the Biden administration announced they would start turning away illegal immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua. So it's ridiculously hard to get an asylum hearing. You'd have an easier time getting Taylor Swift tickets through Ticketmaster or an on-time flight from Southwest. The average wait time to receive an asylum hearing after an application is filed is over 4 years. 4 years! To put that in context, 4 years ago, Marvel movies were still good. No one knew what COVID-19 was, and the January 6, 2021 hearings were almost halfway done. Yes, the hearings lasted so long they actually broke the space-time continuum. Speaking of things that just keep going on and on and on, the Twitter files. Elon Musk also said he would release the Fauci files this week. The Twitter files have had a ton of sequels, and now it's getting spin-offs. This is basically the Fast and Furious franchise at this point. I guess the Twitter files are really about the family we made along the way. The Twitter files have upset many people for many reasons. House Republicans are so outraged over the revelations in the Twitter files that they want to start a committee to investigate the weaponization of the federal government and how it uses companies like Twitter to get around the First Amendment to push its agendas and narratives. Yep, another new House committee. Yay! The Twitter files also upset many Democrats and government agencies, like the FBI, who say it's all misinformation and conspiracy theories. And most of all, the hundreds of pages written on the various Twitter files in less than 2 months is most upsetting to those still waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish writing The Winds of Winter. I feel like we're going to get a Bible sequel before the next installment in the series. Seriously, George, how are you being this badly outpaced when the guy behind the Twitter files has his staff bringing their own toilet paper to work because he fired the janitors? Yes, this is a real thing happening over at Twitter due to Musk's cost-cutting measures. On the bright side, no matter how hard he dropped the ball on this, there's a good chance Don Lemon won't notice it. So what do you think about the stories we covered this week? Leave your comments below. And if you want to help us deliver nonpartisan news, be sure to support America Uncovered by going to patreon.com/America Uncovered. All it takes is as little as $1 or more per episode to fight YouTube's censorship and demonetization. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.